Lillahi ta'ala, correct your intentions. Let's continue going over preparation for Hajj. Yani we just got out of Ramadan not too long ago. And Hajj is on its way. It'll be here before you know it. And so, by the suggestion of one of our sisters, we started going over Hajj. So we're on level 1. Last time we talked about the ability to perform Hajj. Now today, inshallah, we will talk about the integrals of Hajj and Umrah. And so the author says, وَأَرْكَانُ الْحَجِّ أَرْبَعَةٌ. According to Abu Shuja', there are 4 integrals for Hajj. Really, there's 6 though. So there are 6 integrals for Hajj, but Abu Shuja' mentioned 4. We'll see what we have here. أحدها الإحرام مع النية. One of them, he says, is ihram with the intention. أي النية مع الإحرام أي النية المصاحبة للدخول في الحج. What this means is the intention that puts the person into the state of ihram. And even what I just said now, it's not really a translation of what I'm reading, but that's the meaning here. That's the rule, and that's the meaning intended here. But just in case you want to critique my translation, I'm saying that. So the niyyah, which is the ihram, you could say the intention, that's valid. And you could say ihram, that's valid. And the way he said it was al-ihramu ma'a niyya, the ihram with the intention, which really means the intention for ihram, or the intention that renders you in the state of ihram. Ihram here means what makes some things haram for you that are not normally haram. But because of your intention and your engagement in this worship, some things as part of the worship have become haram for you. Like fasting. I mean, when you fast, aren't there some things that are haram for you because you're fasting? So it's like that. And the prayer has that. When you say Allahu Akbar to start your prayer, that's called the ihram for your prayer, as you know. So what's haram for you then while you're praying? It's haram for you to turn off your qibla if it's an obligatory prayer. It's haram for you to talk to someone. It's haram for you to play. It's haram for you to eat and drink. Until you finish your prayer, you get out of the ihram of your prayer, and then those things that were haram for you will become halal for you again. So Hajj and Umrah also have things that are haram for you, which we're not going to talk about now, that has its own chapter. So you just have to, if you don't know it, wait until we get to there. I'm not going to answer that. If you want to ask me, I'm not going to answer it now. But all you have to do now is get mentally prepared. So in your mind, you're going to open a room, open up a space in your mind. Say, this space here, this is going to be for the haram things while in a state of ihram. This space is reserved. وَثَانِيهَا الْوُقُوفُ بِعَرَفَةٍ. The second of them is, if you want to translate the statement literally, standing at Arafah, wukuf. وَالْمُرَادُ حُضُورُ الْمُحْرِمِ بِالْحَجِّ لَحْظَةً بَعْدَ زَوَالِ شَمْسِ يَوْمِ عَرَفَةَ. And what's intended here is not standing per se, but being present in the area that's called Arafah. Yani, for the muhrim, the one who's now in a state of ihram, to be present, and he's in ihram for Hajj in particular, because Umrah does not have Arafah. So when we talk about Arafah, then for sure we're only talking about Hajj. But we were talking about some other things like circling the house and going between the mountains. Then you might ask, is this for Hajj or Umrah? Are we talking about Hajj or Umrah? But if we're talking about Arafah, we're only talking about Hajj. So what's intended is for the muhrim. So the one who's in the state of ihram is called muhrim. It's with a ha. If your Arabic's not so good, maybe you learn the letters. Let's say you learn the letters. Make sure you pronounce those different letters like ha. I was talking to one brother. He was saying, the letter wahid. You have to say the ha, wahid. Or else when you try to speak Arabic, it's not going to be clear what you're trying to say because you're not distinguishing between different letters. So this ihram, the one who is in the state of ihram, he's called muhrim. Just like a person who's in the state of Islam, he's called Muslim. So what's intended here is for the muhrim to be present. The one who's muhrim for Hajj to be present, even for a moment, in an area called Arafah. Now, I meant to prepare for you a visual. Let me see something here. All right, so you should see a blank page here on my screen. Now, I'm going to crudely draw something for you here. Yani, Bismillah. So you see this circle here. I actually could use this to make a pretty decent circle. This is a computer, but it's okay. So this line here that I'm going to draw, see this line up at the top? That red line, that's zenith. That's noon, zenith. I'll put a Z there. Zenith. Vuhr comes in after zenith, right? So after zenith, you have vuhr. I'll just put a D here. That's vuhr. Then you have what? Asr. I'll put an A here. For Asr. Then you have what? Maghrib. Put an M here. Maghrib. Then you have what? Isha. I'll put an I here. No, it's not obeying me. Isha. Then you have what? Fajr. Put an F here. Okay, so you see my little circle here, what I did there? So you see my little crude circle here because I didn't prepare this for you ahead of time. So at the top of the circle, we have the Z. That's zenith. When does Dhuhr come in? Dhuhr comes in after zenith. So Dhuhr. Then, after a few hours, Asr will come in. You know when Asr comes in, goes back to the shadows. Then when the sun goes down, Maghrib comes in. Then when the twilight goes away, Isha comes in. Then Isha lasts all night long until Fajr comes in. Then Fajr will last for not a long time. The sun will come up. And then the sun will rise until zenith. Okay. And you know also that the night comes before the day. All that's nighttime there. Now, okay, from Maghrib until Fajr, all that's nighttime there. All right, so I went through all of that for what? So what's intended is that the muhrim for Hajj would be for one moment in this area called Arafah. He has a time limit. The ninth day of Dhul Hijjah, يوم عرفة وهو يوم التاسع من ذي الحجة. So starting on the ninth of Dhul Hijjah, after Zenith. So after Zenith means Dhuhr time, because once Zenith is out, Dhuhr starts. So you have from the ninth of Dhul Hijjah, Dhuhr time, at Dhuhr time though, after Zenith, not from dawn, after Zenith. Then Asr time, the ninth of Dhul Hijjah, all the way until Maghrib time. So all of this is daytime here. The ninth of Dhul Hijjah. And then when Maghrib comes in, that's the next day. That's the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. That's Eid. So also Maghrib time, Isha time, all the way until Fajr time. So you have daytime, you have nighttime. So your whole time you can, your whole time you need to catch, just like prayer time, you need to catch the prayer inside the time. You can't be late. So your whole time for Arafah is from Dhuhr on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah until Fajr of the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. So starting at noon, covering Dhuhr time, Asr time, Maghrib time, Isha time, all the way up till Fajr time. That's the time you have for getting there, to be there for one moment. You need to be in Arafah for a moment. So, والمراد حضور المحرم بالحج لحظة بعد زوال شمس يوم عرفة. So what's meant is for the muhrim for Hajj in particular to be present at Arafah for at least one moment after Zenith. Starting after Zenith, that means when Dhuhr starts. But to be clear, because we want to pay attention to the words of the scholars. They all, from whatever I've studied, they all say after Zenith, after Zenith. I don't hear them saying from Dhuhr time, but I'm saying Dhuhr time so that you understand. So from after Zenith on the day of Arafah, and the day of Arafah is the 9th of the month of Dhul Hijjah. So if you're just there for a moment and then you leave, you don't have to be even conscious. You could be asleep. Or you might just walk through, or you could stand there. It's best to be there for part of the day and part of the night. Like if you came at Asr time and waited for the sun to go down and you stayed for some of Maghrib time. So to be there for part of the day and part of the night is better. بشرط كون الواقف أهلا للعبادة, but under the condition that the one who's standing for Arafah is qualified for valid worship. لا مجنونة, not crazy. ولا مغمى عليه, nor in a coma. ولا سكران زائل العقل, nor drunk to the point of insanity. But I don't know why the scholars differentiate between insanity and being drunk to the point of losing the mind. ويستمر وقت الوقوف إلى فجر يوم النحر, and the time of standing at Arafah, which means being present at Arafah, stretches until or remains until the dawn of the day of sacrifice. The day of sacrifice, Yawm al-Nahr, that's Eid day. And that's why, so now if you miss this, then you miss your Hajj. If you miss Arafah, you miss the Hajj. That's why you can make your ihram, as maybe we said in some other lessons before. I don't think we said it last week. You can make your ihram for Hajj from the Eid until the Eid. The time for ihram for Hajj starts when Ramadan is over, from the first day of Shawwal, which is the Eid. And you can make the intention for ihram all the way until the next Eid, which is the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. But not the whole day. You don't have the whole day. You have all the way up until Fajr time. What I'm reading, I'm not sharing the Arabic text with you. I'm reading Sheikh Samir's update of the Sharh of Ibn Qasim. You know which one I'm talking about? التتميم والتهذيب لشرح ابن قاسم الغزي وهو العاشر من ذي الحجة. So that's the 10th. The 10th starts at Maghrib time because the day comes before the night. So the 9th is over at Maghrib time, and then the 10th will start. من ذي الحجة ويستحب فيه الجمع بين الليل والنهار. And it is recommended to merge the night and the day, like I already told you. بأن يكون هناك في كل. Yes. وثالثها الطواف بالبيت. And the third integral is circling the house with capital H. أي الكعبة, meaning circling the Kaaba. زادها الله شرفا. May Allah Ta'ala increase it in nobility. سبع طوفات. 7 laps. جاعلا في طوافه البيت عن يساره. When one makes his circling around the Kaaba, he has to put the Kaaba itself on his left side. So he's not going to be facing the Kaaba, nor is he going to have his back to the Kaaba. And he's not going to have his right side to the Kaaba. So the Kaaba on your left side in particular. مبتدئا بالحجر الأسود. And you're going to start from the corner of the Kaaba that has the black stone. If you start in front of that or after that, it's not going to count for you. Like, imagine you were standing at the corner of the Kaaba that has the black stone and it's right on your left shoulder. So if you back up, you didn't start yet. You just put yourself in position and then you backed up and then you started going forward. So it's not going to count for you until you pass that black stone. Or what if you put yourself in position and then you walked forward a little bit, so like you're ahead of the stone, and then you walked all the way around. It's not going to count for you until you get back around to the black stone. So you need to start at the black stone. Anything else is not going to count until you start at the black stone. محاذيا له في مروره بجميع بدنه لئلا يتقدم جزء منه على الحجر الأسود. All what I just read in Arabic means what I told you already. So you're going to be parallel to the black stone, starting there. فَلَوْ بَدَأَ بِغَيْرِهِ لَمْ يُحْسَبْ لَهُ. If a person starts anywhere else, it's not going to count. Not until he just gets to the black stone. وَرَابِعُهَا السَّعْيِ. And the fourth integral is the striving or the striding. في المسعى الأصلي in the original place for striving or striding. In the original place for striding. This means you have to do it in bounds. In bounds. Not out of bounds. You ever remember playing a game as a kid and then someone says, "You're out of bounds, you're out of bounds. You have to get back in." الذي سعى فيه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وصحابته الكرام. Those bounds or boundaries in which the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم strode and his noble companions. وسلفنا الصالح, as well as our pious predecessors. وخلفهم الذين قتفوا أثرهم. And the latter day generations also, that's the boundaries where they made sa'i, those who followed the footsteps of the Prophet and his companions and the Salaf. وَأَجْمَعَ عَلَى اعْتِبَارِهِ أَهْلُ الْعِلْمِ الثِّقَاتِ. And the trustworthy people of knowledge have a consensus that these boundaries are regarded for the validity of the sa'i. وهو المسعى الكائن بين الصفا والمروة. That's the boundaries that are present between الصفا and al-marwa. الصفا and al-marwa. الصفا وهو طرف جبل أبي قبيس. الصفا is the edge of Mount Abu Qubais. Mount Abu Qubais. So it's like base. Talking about, like, we're making the analogy of a game. You have boundaries and you have base. So now you have to get to base and you have to stay in boundaries. So As-Safa is the edge of the mountain of Abu Qubais. So that's one base you have to get to. وَالْمَرْوَةُ وَهُوَ طَرَفُ جَبَلِ قَيْنُقَاعٍ. Between As-Safa and Al-Marwa. And Al-Marwa is the edge of Mount Qaynuqa'. سبع مرات, and one must also do 7 laps. وشرطه أن يبدأ في أول مرة بالصفا. Its condition is to start at first from As-Safa ويختم بالمروة, and to end at Marwa. So he starts on base at Safa. He stays in bounds until he gets to the other base at Al-Marwa. وَيُحْسَبُ ذَهَابُهُ مِنَ الصَّفَا إِلَى الْمَرْوَةِ مَرَّةً. And when one goes from As-Safa to Al-Marwa, this is counted as 1 lap. وَعَوْدُهُ إِلَيْهِ مَرَّةً أُخْرَى. And his coming back from Al-Marwa to As-Safa is counted as another lap. وأن يكون في الموضع الذي عينه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. And it is a condition that one would be in the location that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم specified. قال النووي في المجموع. النووي said in Al-Majmu'. قال الشافعي والأصحاب. الشافعي and the lower mujtahids in the madhab said, لا يجوز السعي في غير موضع السعي. It is not permissible to stride out of bounds, out of the boundaries of the striding. فلو مر وراء موضع السعي. So if one went out of bounds, وراء موضع السعي, يعني out of, يعني خارج الموضع. If one got out of the boundaries of as-sa'i, في زقاق العطارين أو غيره, like if he wound up in the area called زقاق العطارين, or another spot that's out of bounds, لم يصح سعيه, then his striding is not valid. لأن السعي مختص بمكان, because this striding has a special place. فلا يجوز فعله في غيره كالطواف. So it's not permissible to do it anywhere else, just like tawaf. Like you're not gonna say, why don't we make tawaf around this house over here instead of the Kaaba? Let's go over here to this spot and do tawaf. It's not gonna be valid. You have to do tawaf inside al-Masjid al-Haram around the Kaaba, not outside al-Masjid al-Haram. It has its own boundaries, the tawaf circling the Kaaba. Like circling the Kaaba has its own boundaries, also the sa'i between the two mountains has its own boundaries. Intaha, that's the end of the quote of An-Nawawi. وَلِذَلِكَ فَمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يَصِحَّ سَعْيُهُ فِي أَيَّامِنَا. For this reason, anyone in our days who wants his striding to be valid, سعى ذهابا وإيابا في المسعى القديم, then he must stride, coming back and forth in the old lane, in the old mas'ah, which is the original one. Here he called it the old one. At first he said the original one, same thing. الذي قرر حكام الحجاز ونجد الحاليين أن يكون للرجوع فقط من المروة إلى الصفا. The old lane, which is the original lane for going back and forth, one must go back and forth only in this lane which has now been deemed, officiated by the rulers of the area of Al-Hijaz and Najd, the present rulers, that it's only going to be for coming back from Marwa to As-Safa. They said, basically, the lane that you used to go back and forward in for centuries and centuries and centuries, now we're going to restrict that lane only to coming back. And we're going to open a new lane next to it for going from Safa to Marwa, and then you can take the old lane to come back from Marwa to Safa. They said, we want to make room for the people. It's not valid. That's just like saying they want to make room for the people for tawaf, and then permitting people to make tawaf outside of the Al-Masjid al-Haram. It's not valid. So what do you do if there's not enough space? You wait. Let the people who are there, who got there before you, do it, and then leave, and then you go. Just like if it was a prayer and there was no space to pray. If there was literally no space for you to pray, you got there and you can't pray anywhere, then just wait. Like you can't even move, for example. You're stuck where you are. You can't pray. Might have happened to you before. Then what do? Just wait. Let the people finish praying and then you pray. وَهُوَ الْأَقْرَبُ لِلْكَعْبَةِ. This lane that we're saying is the valid one is the one that's closest to the Kaaba. دون زيادة التي استحدثوها بجانبه للذهاب من الصفا إلى المروة. And one should not use the extra lane that they added right next to it and designated it for going from As-Safa to Al-Marwa. That lane is invalid altogether. And they're going to, as it reached me, I haven't gone yet, the guards there, they're going to force you when it's crowded. So if they're going to force you when it's crowded, try to go when it's not crowded and they're not strict. So you can go in a lane that's valid. And also, it reached me that if you go upstairs, because they made all of that indoors now, they didn't used to be indoors. They just built structure over the proper area for the convenience of the Muslims. And they leveled the ground and everything. I was told upstairs also is not strict, so that you could go back and forth upstairs without a problem. And since I mentioned for you upstairs, is that in line with staying in bounds? Yes, it is, because going up doesn't take you out of bounds. Just like if you were in a masjid. Okay, so you're in the masjid. Let's say you didn't even build anything there, just you designated the land as masjid. If you pray in that land, you're praying in the masjid. If you built a building there, you're praying in the masjid. If you gave it a second floor, even if you prayed on the roof, you're still praying in the masjid. If you gave it 50 flights up into the sky, and then you prayed on the roof, you're still praying in the masjid because you're going up. It's still valid. No problem. You're not out of bounds. That's a general rule. Yani, the general rule is the sky follows the ground. The sky follows the ground that's under it. If you're in an airplane, how do you pray? Which way do you pray if you're in an airplane? You need to determine over which land are you in that airplane. What's the Qibla on the ground? Whatever's the Qibla on the ground, that's your Qibla in the airplane. Hmm. And what was their motivation for adding this? Those who added this, they wanted to contribute to the, yani they wanted to contribute like other Muslim rulers have contributed in the past. Just like I told you now, they put that whole area indoors. That doesn't invalidate the sa'i in any way. Back in the Prophet's day, it was outside. And then as the Muslims got developed, they built over that. That's not going to invalidate the sa'i that it became indoors. And even if they level the ground, that's not going to invalidate the sa'i. So all these contributions, some people said, we want to do a contribution too. Hey, why don't we expand the lane of mas'a? That's not valid. وَبَقِيَ مِنْ أَرْكَانِ الْحَجِّ الْحَلْقُ أَوِ التَّقْصِيرُ. And remaining of the integrals of Hajj is shaving or trimming. Let me see what's here. It says the entire Hajj invalid. No, just the sa'i is invalid. Just the sa'i is invalid. So you're going to have to do a valid one. It's not going to validate all your Hajj, but what's going to happen? You're not going to get out of ihram. That means all the things that are haram for you because of the ihram, they're going to stay haram for you. Now, your question made me have to mention some of what I said I'm not going to talk about, but I want to mention it for clarity to tell you how important that is. Because in the state of ihram means you can't put grease in your hair. You can't clip your nails. You can't even cut your hair. And you can't wear clothing that has stitching in it. And you can't get married. And you can't be with your spouse. So how are you going to live like that? You're going to go back home and go to work with two cloths on? Maybe work in the office. You're going to come into the office and you have just two cloths on and some flip-flops. And your hair is getting dry and cracking. And your nails are getting long. So you need to do whatever you need to do to get out of ihram. Or you're a trucker, for example. You're going to be driving from one end of the country to the other end of the country just with a cloth wrapped around your waist and one around your chest and flip-flops. You said, doesn't the plane move? Yeah, that's... you're welcome. That's not going to invalidate your prayer unless you get turned off your qibla. If it takes you off your qibla, you need to move, you need to turn so that you stay on qibla. Just like if you prayed in a boat. If you prayed in a boat, then you need to turn if the boat turns. Wait, let's go back here. وَبَقِيَ مِنْ أَرْكَانِ الْحَجِّ الْحَلْقُ أَوِ التَّقْصِيرُ. And remaining of the integrals of Hajj is shaving or trimming. وَالْحَلْقُ أَفْضَلُ لِلذَّكَرِ. Shaving, that means bald. Shaving bald. Shaving is better for the male. وَالتَّقْصِيرُ لِغَيْرِهِ. And trimming is better for other than a male. That means female and hermaphrodite. وَأَقَلُّهُ إِزَالَةُ ثَلَاثِ شَعَرَاتٍ. And its minimum is removal of 3 hairs. مِنْ رَأْسِ الْمُحْرِمِ. From the head of the muhrim. From his head. Not from his chin, for example. بِنَحْوِ حَلْقٍ أَوْ نَتْفٍ. By doing something like shaving it or plucking it. Subhanallah. There was a person I knew. He went to Hajj. He had a lot of hair. He had dreads in his hair. He went to Hajj. He came back from Hajj. Looks like he didn't take any hair off of his head. Maybe he just pulled out 3 hairs only. Maybe he pulled out 3 hairs only, for example. Or more. I don't know what he did. But my point is, he looked exactly like he looked when he left. And when my eye fell upon him, just something was in my heart. Like, you didn't pull your hair out, brother. But I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not saying he didn't. This guy, he wound up committing apostasy. And I can't even say those are connected. But I always remember this here. Allah knows best about his situation. وَكَذَلِكَ يُفْتَرَضُ التَّرْتِيبُ. And also, there is a sequence, an integral sequence for the integrals of Hajj. There's a sequence for the integrals of Hajj that has to be observed. which is the sequence in most of the integrals, keeping most of the integrals in order. بتقديم الإحرام على كل الأركان السابقة. By, in the first place, getting into the state of ihram before doing any other integral. وتقديم الوقوف على الطواف والحلق. And being present at Arafah before circling the Kaaba and before shaving the head. وتقديم الطواف على السعي. And by circling the house before striding between the mountains. إن لم يفعله بعد طواف القدوم. That's if the person didn't already stride between the mountains when he arrived in Mecca and then circled the house for arriving in Mecca, which that's a sunnah. That's not an integral of Hajj. So what this means is there's an act that unlocks the striding between the mountains, which is making tawaf around the Kaaba. Even if it's not an obligatory tawaf around the Kaaba, just making tawaf around the Kaaba will allow for you to stride between the mountains. So there's 3 tawafs. There's the tawaf of arrival, when you get to Mecca because you arrived. That's sunnah. Then there's the integral tawaf, and then there's the farewell tawaf when you want to leave Mecca. So there's an integral tawaf. If you didn't already stride between the mountains because you did an arrival tawaf, then you need to do this integral tawaf before you stride between the mountains. It is possible, though, to have strode between the mountains before the integral tawaf if you did that after your arrival tawaf. So I hope that's clear. If you have a question, feel free, please. فَلَا يُعْتَدُّ بِمَا قُدِّمَ عَلَى مَحَلِّهِ. And so anything that is put ahead of its space or its spot, anything put ahead of its spot is uncounted. Yani, it's not valid. ولا ترتيب واجب بين إزالة الشعر والطواف. So when we say you have to have the order for most of the integrals, then that means that there is not an obligatory sequence between removing the hair and making tawaf. You can do one of those, either one of those ahead of the other. لكن يستحب أن يرمي العقبة ثم يحلق ثم يطوف. But it's recommended for a person to, what is recommended though, is for a person to throw stones at the station of Aqaba. We didn't talk about throwing stones yet. And then to shave, and then to circle the Kaaba. That's recommended. وأركان العمرة أربعة أشياء. وأركان العمرة أربعة أشياء. And the integrals of Umrah are 4 things, according to Abu Shuja'. وفي بعض النسخ 3 أشياء. بإسقاط الحلق على طريقة من عده استباحة محظور، والمشهور أنه نسك فهو ركن فيها وفي الحج. والصحيح أنها 5. All right, so I'm just not going to translate something here. وأركان العمرة 4 أشياء. There are 4 integrals of Umrah according to Abu Shuja'. Then putting what's after that in brackets until where he says وَالصَّحِيحُ أَنَّهَا 5. But what's correct is that there are 5. بِعَدِّ الْحَلْقِ وَالتَّرْتِيبِ. By counting the shaving, and the sequence. So what are the 5 integrals of Umrah? أولها الإحرام. The first of them is the Ihram for Umrah. ويجب كونه من الميقات كالحج كما سيأتي. I'm not going to translate that right now. وثانيها الطواف. And the second one is tawaf. So you know what Ihram is. The second integral is the tawaf, circling the Kaaba. وثالثها السعي. The third is the striding between the mountains. ورابعها الحلق أو التقصير. And the fourth is shaving or trimming. في أحد القولين وهو الراجح كما سبق قريبا ومقابله أنه ليس من أركان العمرة لأنه استباحة محظور. All that I'm not going to translate right there. والركن الخامس هو الترتيب الحقيقي. And the fifth integral of Umrah is true sequence, meaning sequence in all integrals, keeping everything in order in the Umrah. بين جميع الأركان. Wallahu a'lam. We'll stop there. Do you have any question I can answer for you? Brother said, say it again, please. I'm not sure what you want me to repeat. 6 integrals for Hajj, which are the Ihram, the being present at Arafah, circling the Kaaba, striding between the mountains, shaving or trimming, and keeping the order in most of the integrals. That's 6. You're welcome.